who started mentioning something about spirituality. Now, in this particular research, we define spirituality. We actually concentrated on Islamic spirituality. And what is the spirituality? We started this, I think, is a whole thesis, about 300 pages. I just managed to summarize them in 6 slides. It's spirituality from the Islamic perspective. Actually, we look at the concept of taqwa from the Quran and Sunnah. And then taqwa, we know, like I did mention taqwa, and I saw the sister did this. Taqwa haruna is taqwa is in the heart, and therefore I know she has a question about that because we met in another session. And then you cannot easily measure this taqwa. But then in our research, we don't really measure taqwa, but we look at the manifestations of taqwa, because we believe if you really follow the manifestations, then we can operationalize something. For example, in the Western, literature, they have happiness, sadness, and they measure it all. So in the Islam perspective, why can't we do something? We are not measuring taqwa, let me reiterate. We don't measure taqwa, but we're looking at the manifestations of taqwa. Okay, and these manifestations of taqwa, when we studied in the Quran, there are about 248 verses talking about taqwa alone. But there are about 6 that talks about the sifat al-muttaqin, which is the characteristics of the people who have taqwa. So we extracted these characteristics, about 18 of them. And then after a quite number of study, we realized there are 2 main categories of the sifat al-muttaqin. The first category is the spirituality, which is the relationship between Allah and the abd, which is the relationship between us and Allah, what we have to do. And the other aspect is what we call the Islamic social responsibility, which is the relationship between man and God, and also man and nature. Now, what is spirit? I saw the first presenter wanted to mention about spirit. From Ilm al-Kalam, like Imam al-Ghazali mentioned, I extracted from him and also took from other Islamic scholars. The spirit is actually what we call the ruh. The ruh, when it is inside the human being, is called a spirit. When it is outside, when the person dies, it becomes ruh. Okay, and then that's why if you look at the Surah Yusuf and other surah, it mentions inna nafsa la'amaratun bisu, because he is the ruh is within him. He's not dead yet. But after he dies, someone asks, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ. He says, قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي. We don't know when the ruh goes. Where does it go? Only Allah knows. And we know human being consists of 2 parts. Like I mentioned in the last session, human beings consist of 2 parts. A human consists of the material aspect, which is the body, and it also consists of the spiritual aspect. Every human being has these 2 aspects. And in these 2 aspects, with the human body, with this body, we need to exercise, we need to eat, we need to do other things like drinking water to make this human body grow. That is the material aspect. And then the spiritual aspect, we need to pray, do other spiritual duties like prayers, like adhkar, other things to make it. If you eat only, you don't pray, you don't do other things like that, it makes you, you're physically strong, but the Prophet said in another hadith, you're a walking dead person. And at the same time, if you have more, you don't exercise, you'll fall sick. So they go hand in hand. And most of the research we realize in economics, they concentrate on the material aspect, whereby we have to eat, we have to look at maximization, other things. The other aspect is given, is forgotten. So we came up with this research to look at that other aspect, which is actually the main gap, which is actually forgotten in most of our research, contemporary research works. So we said there is importance of spirituality. We don't have, it's in the write-ups, there is a lot of literature that talks about the importance. Sorry, like Howard 2004, like Al-Hilali 2000, and a lot of researchers I mentioned in the papers. And now, why Islamic spirituality? Why not Hinduism spirituality or other spirituality like I mentioned? I just mentioned in detail right now. And the research gap. The first research gap is we look at the spirituality literature that has gone along. Most of these works are captured from the Western value system. And from the West, someone like Cousin Posner, he made mention of in spirituality, in religion, in leadership. And they defined spirituality as anything that drives you to do something to give yourself life a particular purpose is your spirituality. So it's like saying a thief who has a particular idea to just be a thief, because he believes someone stole from his grandfather, so he has to steal from this person. If you have such a belief, it means you have spirituality. That's from the Western perspective. And the Islam perspective, like I mentioned, is just basically the relationship between man and Allah, and how you make this relationship strong by prayers and by other things. Now the second research gap is the inculcation of spirituality in Muslim employees who are working in Western organizations. We really need to look at this. And also those Muslim employees working in Muslim organizations. Mostly we have a particular scheme of saying, if you do this work, I will pay you this much. If you do this, I'll give you that. Send them for training for other economics, this. But there is very less training in terms of spirituality, how to develop their spirituality when it comes to Islam. In the research methodology, here I don't have anything, I only have a particular diagram, so I just want to mention how we came by this. And in research methodology, we used disproportionate stratified random sampling of 405 Muslim employees working in Muslim organizations in Malaysia. And why Muslim organizations? Because we are talking about taqwa. And basically only Muslims can have taqwa. Like someone asked me before, what about the taqwa of Christians? I said, Christians never have taqwa. Okay, so that's the basic. And also the unit of analysis is the individual Muslim employee. And then in terms of methodology, we used, first we had, the questionnaire used for this particular research is self-constructed. We started it from the scratch. Okay, and it has to go through validation and other things. Finally, we have 17 items that is measuring only Islamic spirituality. Religiosity, I don't take it in this particular study. Okay, on that part, since we have started the questionnaire, we have to run what we call a principal component analysis. In other words, the exploratory factor analysis. And after running exploratory factor analysis, we need to confirm, and we confirm using the software called the analysis of movement structures, AMOS. Those who are familiar with structural equation modeling will know about this. So we ran these results for the EFA, and this is the results that we get. This is the CFA, confirmatory factor analysis using AMOS. And as we can see, these are the items on the right-hand side. We have IS4, IS3 until this IS9. Now, some of these questionnaires, almost all of them are talking about relationship between man and Allah. Okay, as to, we don't ask directly whether you pray 5 times, because everybody definitely will give you the same answer. But we ask indirectly, will you advise, do you encourage others to pray on time? And how do you encourage fasting? Do you encourage fasting? Do you do it yourself? Tell us honestly. And there is one something I have to mention here, especially from the academic point of view. People will talk about social desirability bias. In other words, if you ask anyone about religiosity or spirituality, no one will tell you, I don't pray. Everybody will say, I pray. So how do you take care about that? Now, I take care about that using a particular maxim, a qaida in Usul al-Fiqh, that says, al-asl fil Muslim, al-asl fil Muslim al-adala. Okay, as-sidq wal-adala. That is, under normal circumstances, if you meet any Muslim, try to have a husn zan, that he will tell you the truth, and that is the basic of every Muslim. So we believe, we wrote it, that please tell us the truth. So whatever they tell us, we never suspect them. If we suspect them, things we have su'u zan. So it should be the other way around. So we trusted them, and we give them the questions, and they give us the answers. So based on the answers, we ran EFA, and we have this. Now the first item you can see, in other words, the first latent variable is rituals, which is the ibadat. The ibadat like in salat, zakat, Sawm and Hajj. And also the next one is forgiveness, al-afu. Then we have belief, which is iman, with all the 6 pillars. And we have dhikrullah, the remembrance of Allah. Now these 4 are the results of the exploratory factor analysis out of all the 17 items we extracted from the questionnaires. And we can see that the covariances between all of them is greater than 0.2. That's what we expect to see. But before we go there, let's look at the chi-square. Chi-square is 488 and p is 0.00. It means it's very significant. It is very significant. What it's telling us is this model is rejected. Okay? In other words, because p is less than alpha, we reject null hypothesis. Rejecting null hypothesis means this particular model and the data we picked, they don't tally. You know, they are different. If they are different, it means we cannot prove. There's nothing we can do. And also we can see the CFI and the RMSE. CFI, the actual required number is getting closer to 1, and RMSE getting closer to 0 is the best. So based on chi-square, PDF, and then CFI, we have to reject this model. So we have to go for revising the model to make sure if the model is accurate, then we can mention that these are the 4 main items. Whenever we talk about Islamic spirituality, we can mention them. So we revised the model, and it's what we had. If you look at the first model here, the very first rituals, there are about 5 items. But after revising, we took out 3 items. We took out 2 items rather, sorry. And then we have 3 main remaining. The same happens to the next one, the third and the fourth. So now all have 3 items, which is actually the cutoff, the basics. And we can see chi-square now reduced to 126. And then CFI and RMACA are quite within the average, acceptable range. Based on this, we can see that the model actually fits the particular data. And for that matter, we confirm that yes, in Islamic spirituality...
You have 1 minute, please.
Yeah, I have one more slide. In Islamic spirituality, we can see that spirituality, to measure the Islamic spirituality of a Muslim employee, we have to consider these 4 main variables. And discussion of findings. This is what we have captured in our paper.
Yeah.
And no matter how, we said that no matter how excellent a growth strategy, economic development strategy, or Islamic economic model is, it remains a mere promise on paper without the necessary qualified and highly motivated workforce to materialize it. And for that matter, we really have to give a serious look into spirituality, not only on the economic aspect or the strategy aspect. And we can see that based on that, highly motivated Muslim employees with a sense of purpose in life, as shown in the IS means Islamic spirituality determinants, need to be improved in Muslim employees. In conclusion, this particular research has contributed new knowledge in the existing literature of spirituality and the Islamic management in particular. And then